I was the youngest of three sisters, born during an unusually cold spring in the suburbs of Minnesota, where the wind still scratched at the windows even as the first flowers began pushing up through the ground. I don't remember much about my childhood, only that I always felt different. Not because I was special, but because I carried a quiet sadness inside me, as if my soul already knew something it couldn't quite explain. I was a fragile little girl. I caught colds all winter, had sore throats year-round, and when I was just 4 years old, the doctor told my mother that my tonsils had swollen so much they were blocking my breathing. They recommended surgery. "It's just a simple procedure," they told her. "Just a tonsillectomy." I remember hearing them say that. But even at 4 years old, I knew nothing is ever just. I was scared. Not of needles or scalpels. I was afraid of never coming home. That morning, my mother dressed me in my favorite soft blue dress, the one with a little bird embroidered near the hem. I brought along my teddy bear, the one with a torn ear. My mom said, "Just think of it as a nap. You'll wake up and it'll be all over." I gripped her hand tightly as they wheeled me into the operating room. There was something in the air that made it hard to breathe, not because of my illness, but because it felt like I was leaving everything familiar behind. They told me to count. 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure how far I got. Everything faded. Then it went black. But the frightening part wasn't that I passed out in a stark white room filled with the smell of antiseptic. The frightening part was that I had felt like I was dying inside long before that moment. No one noticed. No one asked why a 4-year-old girl had eyes that seemed to look far beyond this world, like someone who had lived many lives. No one wondered why I was always so quiet, why I often dreamed of flying, or why I sighed in the middle of the night as if I was hearing a voice calling me home. Death doesn't always arrive with sirens or screams. Sometimes it slips in silently like a chill, like a whisper. For me, death began with silence. The silence of afternoons without anyone holding me. The silence when I smiled so my mother wouldn't worry. And that morning, when her hand fell away from mine, I knew something had shifted. Something I couldn't return from. I left my body on an ordinary morning, wearing a blue dress, clutching my worn teddy bear. But what I saw on the other side was anything but ordinary. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. It was a living world, waiting for me to step into it. I don't know the exact moment I died. I only remember that there was a stillness so profound, so complete that I could no longer hear my heartbeat, the clatter of instruments in the operating room, or the murmurs of anxious nurses. It was as if everything had been pulled into a void. And strangely, I wasn't afraid. There were no ghosts, no hell, no judgment. Just a silence, not the kind that feels lonely, but the kind that wraps itself around you like a soft blanket over a weary soul. Then from that emptiness, a light began to appear. It wasn't blinding. It wasn't overwhelming. It was gentle, like moonlight dissolving into mist. I saw myself leaving my body, and yet I didn't panic. I looked down and saw a little girl lying motionless on the operating table. That girl was me, but I no longer felt like I was her. I had drifted away, weightless, breathless, pain-free. I passed through layers of space that no human language could describe. There were no walls, but also no space. Everything kept unfolding, as if I was being invited to go farther. And so I kept drifting. Then I realized something. I wasn't alone. There was a presence beside me. I couldn't see a face, but I knew without question that someone was there, and they loved me. A presence I couldn't name or define, but one that made me feel completely known, completely understood. Whenever I thought of a question, I didn't even have to ask it. The answer would already be there in my mind. No words were needed. Everything happened through a kind of knowing, a form of communication that was purely soul to soul. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. It wasn't here. I began to see colors the human eye could never perceive. I heard sounds that felt like music, but not from any instrument known to man. It was the sound of energy itself, the vibration of life. It moved me so deeply that I wept, though I no longer had a body to cry with. And then I saw a gate. Not a gate in the way we imagine. There were no columns, no doors. Just a swirling field of light that seemed to call me forward. I knew that if I crossed it, I would never return. I stood there, on the edge of something eternal, with my soul faced with a choice, to go on or to turn back. I had reached the boundary where I could have left Earth forever. But what could make such a young soul hesitate? Who or what was calling me home? The answer came from beyond the light, where I encountered a soul I had once known long, long ago. I don't know how long I stood there on the edge of that light. In a place without time, you can't measure seconds or minutes or hours. but I knew something or someone was drawing near. A soul, a presence, a vibration unlike anything I had ever known. As the light softened, I began to see more clearly. Not with my eyes, but with a deep sensing that went all the way to the core of my being. Standing before me was a woman. She wasn't a family member. She wasn't my mother. She wasn't anyone who had existed in my current life. And yet, when her gaze met mine, if you could even call it a gaze, I remembered. Not with my mind, but with something older than memory, the remembrance of the soul. We had known each other before, from somewhere beyond this life, from another incarnation, from a realm beyond words. I didn't know who she had been to me in that other time, a teacher, a sister, a friend, or even a part of myself. All I knew was that when she looked at me, I felt completely seen, without needing to explain, without needing to prove anything. She didn't speak aloud, but I heard her clearly. "You've forgotten who you are." And when she said that, a strange wave moved through my soul. Images began to rise. Not like a film in slow motion, but like layers of emotion unfolding one after another. I saw myself as another child, in another place, with a different face, a different name, a different death, and a different kind of fear. But no matter who I had been in those other lifetimes, one thing had never changed. I had always been searching for the feeling of being loved truly, unconditionally. And this time was no different. The woman placed her hand over my heart. It wasn't a physical touch, but something in me trembled, or rather, my soul trembled. Because in that moment, I felt everything I had never been taught in those 4 short years of life, that I had always been loved, that I had never truly been abandoned, that the light had never left me. I had simply closed my eyes to it. Then she reached out her hand. It had no fingers, no form, just a stream of light in the shape of a person's arm, an arm that had once existed and now had become pure energy. I knew that if I took that hand, I would cross over completely. No going back, no more earth, no more body, just the light and the return to the source. I wanted to go. The deepest part of me was tired. I wasn't afraid of death anymore. I was afraid of living a life that wasn't true. I was afraid of returning and forgetting all of this. But then, I heard something. Faint, distant, so soft it was barely there. But I knew it. It was the sound of my mother crying. I stood between heaven and my mother's arms, and this small, tender soul that I had to choose. Not with logic, but with love. But was that love strong enough to pull me back from the sacred realm of light? And what would happen if I returned? Could I carry the memory of that place with me? Or would the veil fall again, erasing everything I had just remembered? I don't remember how I came back. There was no door, no clear voice calling me, just a shift, like I was being gently pulled backward, drawn toward the place I had just left. There was no resistance, no pain, only a deep, quiet ache, like touching something sacred and having to let go. My body lay there, small, pale, like an empty shell, and I, the soul, the light, the awareness, was hovering above it, watching. I didn't want to return, not because I feared pain, but because I knew no one would understand me anymore. I wouldn't be able to explain what I had just seen. But then I remembered the sound. That cry, my mother's cry, not a scream but a sob that cracked open from somewhere deep in her chest. I felt her pain, and it echoed through the space where I stood, shaking even the silence of the soul realm. And it was that love, the love I once thought I hadn't received enough of, that pulled me back. Not with words, but through a sacred thread between our two souls. When I re-entered my body, the first thing I felt was cold. A freezing current moving through every cell. But it wasn't physically cold. It was the cold of difference. I was no longer the 4-year-old I had been. I was something else. Something that had seen more, felt more, and known more. And now I understood that this world wasn't everything. I opened my eyes under the hospital lights. The ceiling was still there. The needles. The machines. But I was no longer the same. I looked at my mother. And for the first time, I didn't see her through the eyes of a child. I saw her through the eyes of a soul who had chosen to come back for love. I couldn't speak right away, but something inside me made a promise. That I wouldn't let this memory fade. That I would grow up and tell the story. I would remind others that death is not what we should fear. What's truly terrifying is living without ever knowing who we are. And strangely, even though I was still so young, I began to notice things that were different. I knew when someone was sad, even if they said nothing. I could feel the energy in a room. I heard things that weren't spoken out loud. And sometimes, I would recall fragments of the light-filled world as if it whispered to me in my dreams, calling me back. I became a quieter child. I liked sitting alone. I wasn't afraid of the dark. I wasn't afraid of death. But I did begin to fear something else, the fear of forgetting. The fear that this world would make me forget what I had seen. And just as I feared, the magic did begin to fade as I grew older. But one thing never disappeared, the sense that I was here for a reason. A mission. A promise. And you know what? That moment of death, it was the first time I truly lived. But the journey to discover its meaning had only just begun. Time passed. I grew up like any other child, or at least that's what people thought. I smiled when I was supposed to smile, got good grades, followed the rules, and never caused trouble. But inside, I was living two lives. One that looked perfectly normal on the outside, and another quiet, hidden, where I still remembered the light, the formless woman, and the whisper that told me I had forgotten who I truly was. And then I began to notice something strange. Every time I thought about something, even just in passing, it felt like the world around me responded. Once, I imagined failing a math quiz. I wasn't a bad student, but the thought kept playing in my head, again and again. That day, I forgot to bring my completed assignment, exactly as I had pictured. Another time, I was feeling down after being left out by some classmates. I whispered in my mind, maybe no one wants me around. Not long after, I found myself sitting alone in the corner of the classroom, no one calling my name, no one inviting me to join. It was as if my thoughts had taken shape in the real world. I started to pay closer attention. Slowly, fragments of that moment in the light came back to me, one memory in particular. Standing in that radiant realm, I had been shown something I didn't fully grasp at the time. Thoughts are living energy, the presence had told me. A thought isn't just something that stays in your mind. It extends outward, touches the world, and begins to create. Every thought is a seed, and that seed will eventually grow into a moment, a circumstance, a person, an experience. I was shown this truth. If you think about fear, you are inviting it in. If you think about love, you become an extension of that love. And the most dangerous part is that most of us don't even know what we're thinking. We live by habit, by fears passed down through generations, without ever stopping to ask, what seeds am I planting in this world? I, a child who had once died, began to choose each thought with care. I started observing myself. Every time a judgment rose in my mind, I would pause and ask, is this true? Or is this just an old fear resurfacing? Every time I thought I wasn't good enough, I remembered the light, that place where I was loved not for my achievements, but simply because I existed. And so I began to experiment. I tried thinking about gratitude. I tried focusing on healing. I imagined myself as someone who could listen, who could love, who could be a light for someone else. Slowly, something began to shift. I was no longer alone. The right people started coming into my life. The right books appeared at the right time. Answers found me before I could even form the questions. I understood then life does not begin with action. It begins with thought. But if thoughts are that powerful, then what happens when we let go? When do we allow fear to run the show? When the noise of society drowns out the quiet truth that every sentence we whisper to ourselves is, in fact, a prayer. Let me tell you what I learned. How I began to live again, not just once, but every single day, as a soul granted one more sacred chance. I used to think I had died once. But over time, I realized true death isn't when your heart stops beating. It's when you forget who you are. And coming back to life isn't about returning from the afterlife. It's about remembering why you came here in the first place. After everything I experienced, I didn't become a preacher. I didn't go around proclaiming heaven or trying to convince anyone that the spiritual world is real. I simply began to live each day as if everything were sacred. I started looking into people's eyes and quietly wondering, how many cracks has this soul endured? I touched my wounds, and instead of hiding them, I let them remind me that I was truly alive. I stopped trying to be better or smarter. I just wanted to be more honest. I practiced saying, I'm not okay, when I needed to. I practiced sitting still when my heart was restless. And strangely, when I stopped trying to control life, I began to feel its true rhythm, a rhythm that comes from the place I once visited, the place of light, where all souls are connected by invisible threads of love. I came to see that we don't live just for ourselves. Our thoughts ripple through that web of light. A small act of kindness can stir something in the soul of someone halfway across the world. A silent act of forgiveness can shift a destiny. And every time we choose love over fear, we brighten one more point on that web, as if lighting a candle in the dark. One night, I dreamed I stood before that light again. But this time, I wasn't being pulled toward it. and no one asked if I wanted to stay. I simply stood there and watched millions of shimmering lights gently swaying. A voice, soft and steady, spoke. You don't have to die again to remember. Just live as if you've seen. And I understood. We didn't come here to run from death. We came here to learn how to live deeply, awake, and fully. If you feel lost, if you've ever asked, who am I? Why am I here? Please remember this. You are not alone. You are connected. You belong to something far greater than yourself. And that light, the very one I saw when my soul left my body, is still with you, always waiting for you to return. Not through death, but through presence. Live as if you are a soul given the rare gift of being human, just once, in this vast universe. And if you've ever had a strange moment, an unexplainable dream, or a feeling that you touched something far beyond logic, leave your story below. Because maybe, just maybe, the light you once saw is exactly what someone else out there needs most right now.